All right, good morning, everybody, and happy Wednesday. It's the 27th of November. We've got probably going to be a quite rather quiet trading day today ahead of U.S. markets being closed tomorrow. Looking at global markets here, really quite muted on the equity front. We were seeing some action on the rates and currency side, and that's actually where I want to start here this morning. I would say we get started right away. It looks like we're actually live. You guys can all hear me. Thanks for being here. If you're new here today, I've got this new cool feature where I can flip back and forth between cameras. It's really more of a toy, but here we are. So anyway, look, we've got an interesting week where, as I've been saying pretty much all week long so far, from a fund manager's perspective, you know, the end of the month is essentially here. U.S. markets are closed tomorrow. Today is going to be skeleton desks. I was calling one of the desks that I speak to on a daily basis in London this morning, and even those guys are like, they were like a third of the people there. Then I was talking to a guy this morning in New York, and he said everyone's working remotely. So there you go. So for the most part, that's something to keep in mind, that a lot of professionals are really not even paying attention anymore for the rest of the week. Doesn't mean stuff can't happen. In fact, stuff can always happen. But it does mean that we have to be mindful that things are kind of slowing down. So there's opportunity within that as well. So let's look at a couple of things here. First of all, I want to just quickly draw your attention to what we talked about yesterday, which is in the dollar. We talked about the dollar index getting to a point where if it were to go a lot higher, we might have a December to remember. So this is the inverse of this morning. You can actually see the dollar down, euro up. And again, this is something we want to continue to track very closely. So this is the chart that I showed you yesterday. This is the actual dollar index, and you can see at the end of the day, we're backing right off of where we should have. So as long as this remains in place, I think yields on treasuries are going to have a limited ability to to go a lot higher. But again, we want to keep this in mind. This is really important. Let's get to our top three things. I want to show you two stocks that are breaking out. I think one of them we talked about yesterday. I want to talk about NVIDIA, which actually is now in a momentum sell signal. And then I want to talk about United Airlines, which is a stock that we have been flagging as something that's going parabolic. I'm not quite sure why, honestly, but it is, you know, and I think we're now finally at a point where that might be taking a breather. So let's start off with two stocks, and these are both breakout candidates. In other words, they have already broken out. One of them is Deere. I believe we touched on it yesterday. This is the kind of thing that you find when you use a process. Our process is to look at the market through the lens of sectors first. So when we look at the market and we look at, for example, industrial stocks, which are now a bullish trend for 261 days, they recently gave us a new buy signal on the daily chart, and we then very quickly are able to find, you know, stocks within that sector, knowing that background, that are breaking out. And so Deere is doing just that. This is something we think has potentially plenty higher to go. This is a weekly chart, and I think this weekly chart here could see the stock go plenty higher if you kind of measure the distance between in terms of depth of the consolidation period, and you just add it on top of that consolidation period. Very simple, sort of kindergarten stuff to do, but it can be effective. One could imagine an upside price target somewhere in the low 570s. So from this point here currently, that's about another 23, 24% higher. So That's number one. That's one stock we definitely want to keep on the radar, given the fact that it's now just recently broken out of a consolidation period that it's been in since March. Number two is the exchanges. I was looking at the financial sector, and I noticed something very similar taking place here. Again, what we were doing is I went into the market rover. I was looking at what the financial sector looked like. So I was looking at financials. I ended up breaking it down into brokers and exchanges. And I noticed that CBOE, the ticker symbol of the CBOE Global Markets company, is actually breaking out. And so I looked at that on the weekly chart, peeled back sort of the onion, if you will, and came up with another idea here where exactly just like Deere, a stock that's in this case been consolidating since August. Deere was consolidating for a longer period of time. But again, same idea. We measure the distance of the consolidation period, we copy it, we add it on top, and we come to an ultimate profit target, in this case, about 7% higher, so around 232. So again, what I like to do is I like to use a process where I focus on, change the camera here. Here we go, where we go from looking at sectors and groups and asset classes, and then digging in deeper to see if there's individual securities or commodities that rhyme with that theme. All right. So we've talked about a trade idea in Deere. That's number one. We talked about a trade idea, breakout trade idea in CBOE. Third thing I want to talk about is NVIDIA. This is for momentum. So we have something called the TST Trender Momentum Indicator. It measures momentum. So basically whether a stock has momentum on the upside or on the downside. We've only had 2 other times this year, I believe, maybe 3 other times, when NVIDIA became a momentum sell signal. And this morning actually, or confirmed as of yesterday's close, NVIDIA is now a new momentum sell signal. That does not mean the stock is to fall apart, that it's a bad company, that I hate it, none of that. It just means that the momentum is switching. We have a very clear defined stop loss. If it goes back above 141 and change, the trade is over. But for right now, we have a momentum downside target at about 5% from here, so at around $130. So that's one thing that I'm looking at as well. So that's 3 trade ideas here in like 7 minutes for you guys to look at. And then another one, and this one is, it's a little baffling to me. I'm not quite sure why it's happening. But then again, sometimes the why isn't all that important, particularly in a case like this. But you look at United Airlines and you look at a stock here that has just gone absolutely parabolic. I'm not quite sure why. It's not like oil is falling apart. It's not like, you know, people are going to start doubling down on first class business seats or whatever. I don't think any of that's happening. So I'm not quite sure what it is, and maybe someone has an idea. But we're looking at a stock here that basically since, let's call it August, early August, is now up 137%. This is not like a meme stock or a crypto stock. This is United Airlines. And, you know, it's one thing if it was just United doing it for whatever reason, but Delta Airlines doing something similar. And so a lot of these stocks, and I've said this weeks ago, so that's been early and wrong, although I never really took a trade on it. But now I'm ready to put on a trade. And I think what's happening here is it's getting extremely overbought. So again, you know, it's notable that the trend remains intact. So if I look at United Airlines on our market rover, I mean, this stock is absolutely in a bullish trend. You can see it was in a neutral trend. That's this black background color. And then it turned into a bullish trend in early September. And sure enough, it's rallied 115% or whatever since then. But I think it's now getting exhausted. And again, I'm not saying that the stock has to fall apart. But I also don't think it has a lot of upside from here. So this is an opportunity for those of you guys that like to use options credit spreads, or at least for me, I can only speak for me, of course, where I might make a bet that the stock is going to consolidate, or go down to some extent, maybe even go a little bit higher, but be limited, right? So there's an opportunity here to do an options bear call spread in my view. So that's Deere, CBOE, NVIDIA, and United Airlines, 4 trade ideas here this morning, the day before Thanksgiving, nonetheless, in like 9 minutes. I hope this is helpful for you guys. If you like it, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you don't, please give us feedback, or just, unsubscribe or whatever. Second thing I want to talk about, though, beyond the trade ideas, is there is a point to be made about rates. And I want to quickly just take this full circle to what I mentioned before, because we talked about rates not being able to go up a whole lot more unless the dollar goes up, and vice versa. So it ties into a question here. Keith is asking, what do you see in the TLT? So TLT is the price of bonds, long-term bonds, right? 20 to 30 year plus duration. So basically, what you're looking at the at momentum, and so it's going to take time for momentum to change here, right? So I would be quite careful in terms of bond yields because we're at a pretty critical spot. I'm not really looking to trade bonds here right now, to be honest with you, Keith. I think we're at too critical a juncture. Think about the headline news that could be coming out of the administration or the upcoming administration. there's a lot of and then we have a lame duck session, right? So there's a lot of stuff here that can really throw this trade off. I'm honestly of the opinion that unless we see rates go above 4.6 in the 10-year, or even 4.7, I have like no interest in anything. So I personally am not really looking to trade bonds here right now. I think we're in a consolidation phase. I'm going to leave that to next year, unless of course something comes up in the meantime. So that's where, again, that big picture, look at things, helps us to kind of contextualize things. So hopefully that to some extent at least helps to answer your question, Keith. Again, I would really wait for something to happen here. I think rates are kind of stuck where they are right now. Again, once that changes, of course, we'll start looking at it. Silver and gold, again, guys, if you have questions, please type in more than just your ticker. It's honestly not very helpful and honestly also a bit rude, to be quite frank with you. Just give us an actual question. But I guess there is a question on silver. I've been saying this now for a couple of weeks. Look, we reduced our gold position yesterday. We got out of it for inner circle and things like that, and I think that the volatility pickup it has not really helped the cause here. So it's the same thing for silver. The volatility pickup is one reason that I'm out of it. I think ultimately silver and gold have a lot higher to go, but I see no reason to be in it right now. Right, I need to see some sort of new upside momentum. As far as I'm concerned, we had a breakout attempt that essentially failed. Right, that's this thing, and then we're right back down. So I don't really have a lot of reason. And again, as I said, I believe yesterday and earlier this week, I just don't see a catalyst here with the appointment of Scott Bessent as Treasury Secretary for gold and silver to go meaningfully higher in over the next few months. Of course, once that changes, it changes and we'll adapt. But right now, I've been long gold, and I actually personally remain long gold. I'm not selling my positions, but I might hedge it with some short gold futures. But from a sort of a trade alert perspective, we wanted to take book gains on gold earlier this week, just to be out of it for now, because we've had a huge run and it's been a good run, and so why not take a pause? Question is on BITO. Look, I don't think the Bitcoin run is over, but it makes a lot of logical sense in my view that the 100,000 mark that we kind of got to the other day is going to be causing a bit of an upside cap on this situation. And when I say situation, I mean this obviously will extend beyond just Bitcoin. It's also going to translate into things like BITO. It's going to translate into things like Ethereum, all that space. You need to take your cue, in my view, from Bitcoin. So if you're the vendor's asking about BITO, if you're buying BITO just because it's a leveraged play or an easier play for you than Bitcoin, you got to understand what Bitcoin's doing. If you don't have a read on Bitcoin, I don't know how you can trade BITO. Like, that's the driver of it. Look at the correlations longer term, and it's actually been underperforming Bitcoin. So I think this stuff can still go higher, but again, it very much like in gold and silver, there's more of it's a bumpier road right now. So I'm a buyer on dips on some of these things, but I'm not quite sure I want to do that until we see some sort of reversal. And I think Bitcoin is is starting to look a bit better here after a couple of days. So I wouldn't be short, but I really don't want to be like crazy long either, like double long that I'm already more long than I already am on some of this stuff. But again, mostly for me, it's just a position in Bitcoin, right? From a diversity perspective, we actually do have a long position in Coinbase with options. If you're an Inner Circle member, you know that. So that kind of goes along the same lines of BITO. So at the end, I'm still constructive until it breaks down. Nicholas is asking, would rising inflation be the catalyst for metals to rise? It's probably a bit more complex than that, but yes, rising inflation is certainly one bit. If you have not yet received our research PDF, Nicholas, on higher inflation for longer, it comes from our investment advisory firm. So you just have to send us an email. You can even just reach out to Joel here. I think he put his, and then we can get the appropriate person over at Blue Marlin to forward that to you. So anyone that wants our inflation higher for longer inflation thesis PDF and description, just maybe just send an email to support@thesteadytrader.com. I can put that in here, support@thesteadytrader.com, and then they will forward it to people at Blue Marlin, and it can be forwarded to. So, yeah, here we are, 15 minutes. I hope this was helpful, folks. This is the last Set the Market show for this week. We obviously have Thanksgiving tomorrow. U.S. markets are going to be closed. And then Friday will be a holiday shortened trading week. Again, it's the last trading day, half trading day actually, for U.S. markets on Friday for the month of November. And then we're going to come back fully charged next week and go into December, which, the first 2.5 weeks or so should be full of opportunity, and even the latter 2.5 weeks, it just ends up being a bit less volume out there. So again, if you want that inflation higher for long report, I would encourage everyone to get it. Just email support@thesteadytrader.com. If you're not aware of what that higher inflation for longer is, get educated. Like, seriously do, because you're gonna regret it at some point if you're not at least educated on what that thesis is. In the meantime, though, have a great and happy Thanksgiving. Or if you're elsewhere, just have a good, hopefully, a couple of days off or so here from U.S. markets. And we'll see you guys back here on Monday. Please subscribe, thumbs up, so that we can continue to show and so you get updated live in real time when we do these shows. Happy Thanksgiving, guys, and we'll see you guys back here on Monday. If you're a Vertical X Pro member, we've got a member session coming up in 40 minutes. I've got a couple of trade alerts that I want to give you there. So